Hello and welcome to the Golden Playbook, and today we are doing a rookie redraft mock draft. So essentially I'm only looking at the 2025 outlook for these rookies, as opposed to a dynasty draft when you're obviously looking to their future, trying to project how they're going to do in the coming seasons. In this video, I'm looking at 2025 alone and how I think they're going to perform this season in their current situations on their current teams. If you like this type of fantasy football content, make sure you subscribe down for more. Let's get straight into the 101. And this is the easiest pick of the entire draft. This is obviously Ashton Jeanty. To put in perspective, he is my RB4 right now, overall in my rankings for every running back. So he is obviously going to be the top rookie to be drafted. Home run landing spot in Las Vegas. I think Ashton Jeanty is going to get 20 to 25 touches a game and be an absolute workhorse for Vegas. Really a no-brainer. He's in a tier of his own for this season and for this class for seasons to come. Ashton Jeanty, easy 101. Oh, and I should also preface that I'm doing this for the Superflex League. That way we can talk about a couple of the quarterbacks. If it was non-Superflex, I wouldn't be looking at any rookie quarterbacks. You could argue Cam Ward as, a backup QB2, but unless it's super flex, I'm really not looking at any quarterbacks in this rookie class. But for this draft, so we can talk about the quarterbacks, we will be doing super flex. And for me, the next three guys are kind of in a tier, so I don't feel too strongly about one guy over the other. But for video's sake, I put Tet McMillan in my 102, and I think he's really just going to be the wide receiver one for a decent offense. Since Dave Canales has taken over in Carolina, Bryce Young has kind of put the pieces together a little bit. Tet McMillan should be Bryce's number one target. Big guy on the outside. Should get 10 to 12 targets a game. And if the first round talent that we see him as takes over, then he should have a very solid fantasy season. I could easily see him being a high-end wide receiver too. I wouldn't be totally shocked if he snuck in to be back-end wide receiver one. But I view him as a high-end wide receiver two for this 2025 season at least. And at the 103, I have Travis Hunter in that slot. Obviously, this one is a lot more variable than the first two guys. The first two guys have solidified positions, roles, and you know exactly what you're going to get. You're going to have to gamble a little bit with Travis Hunter. Obviously, we don't know what his snap counts are going to be on offense and defense. We don't know if the workload will end up being too much for him, causing an overwork injury or something like that. Facing the facts, we know Travis Hunter should be the wide receiver two behind Brian Thomas, and really it's a 1A, 1B situation. Trevor Lawrence needs to take that step and really provide and produce for these two wide receivers, and I think he will do so under Liam Cohen's new offense. I really think they can have a Mike Evans, Chris Godwin type feel to these receivers. So I really like Travis Hunter to have a very solid season. I'm not too worried about snap counts. I think he's going to be in there when it matters most, and they're going to manufacture touches in his hands because he is truly special with the ball in his hands. So I really like Travis Hunter for the 2025 season. We'll have to see after that how his splits are shaping up, see what his offense to defensive ratio is. But for 2025, I really think they're going to try to utilize him on offense. And the last guy in this little tier of players is Omarion Hampton, running back for the Chargers. First round guy. Obviously, he's going to build into being the workhorse. They signed Najee, and I expect them to use Najee especially early a bit, try to ease Hampton into the NFL. But during the back half of this season, I think Hampton's going to be a workhorse, 20 touches a game type guy. Can play on all three downs, so they don't have to take him off the field. I think Hampton can easily be a high-end RB2, despite Najee Harris being there. I think the Chargers really want to pound the rock. That's kind of the Harbaugh style behind that strong O-line. Not to mention they're not going to be able to stack the box with Herbert and some of the new receiving weapons they have. So I really like Hampton to have a very solid 2025 season. Next guy up is Cam Ward. And like I said, this would be for a Superflex league. Hopefully Ward would be your QB2, or if you're punting on quarterback a little bit, you have a back-end QB1, high-end QB2. So hopefully he's somewhere in that range, because I don't think Cam Ward is going to be a stud, top 10 quarterback in his rookie season. But I think he should be a solid fantasy option, a top 15 to 17 guy, which in Superflex is quite valuable at your quarterback too. So I think this would be kind of the position I would be taking Cam Ward after those top 4 rookies who really have prime roles. Cam Ward has a decent surrounding cast that he can get the ball to. Doesn't have a ton of the rushing upside, I don't think, at least not at the NFL level. So this is where I would slot him in as hopeful of a quarterback 2 situation there. And this is where things get a little less chalky, and I'm going RJ Harvey at my 106. And I know this seems crazy, but Sean Payton has really talked up Harvey. I think Payton wants to turn RJ Harvey into his Alvin Kamara a little bit that he had with New Orleans. A guy who can do it on all 3 downs, should get 50 to 60 catches in this Denver offense. Sean Payton loves to throw the ball to running backs. I think Harvey will have a lot more work in the receiving game than people are realizing. And Sean Payton kind of knows what he has in McLaughlin and Estime already. So he has this new prized weapon in RJ Harvey, who I know he wants to get the Barack to. I think he's going to have a very strong 2025. I think he'll be the RB3 of his class behind Jeanty and Hampton, ahead of some of those Ohio State guys and whatnot, who we'll get to later. But I really like RJ Harvey's 2025 outlook, and honestly, seasons to come. I think Sean Payton really likes this guy, and his production will reflect that. Next in the 107 slot, this is where we take our first tight end, and to some surprise maybe, this is Tyler Warren. And I know there's a lot of question marks at quarterback. Is it A-Rich? Is it Daniel Jones? Preferably it is Daniel Jones if you're going to take Tyler Warren up this early. But I think Indianapolis wants the tight ends to be in their identity, much like in San Fran where George Kittle is kind of the do-it-all. Can be the focal point of the passing game. He's a stud in the run game. I think that's what they want Tyler Warren to be. And I know they have Michael Pittman and Downs and some outside threats, but I don't think they have a guy that's over the middle that is going to just swallow up a bunch of targets like Tyler Warren will do. We're hopeful Daniel Jones is the quarterback just for his fantasy sake. If A-Rich becomes the starter, he'll have to drop down a little bit for me. But I've got a slight feeling Tyler Warren is going to be the best tight end out of this class this season. I think in 2025, he could be a top 8 tight end. And it wouldn't be too crazy. We've seen the rookies the last couple seasons be tight end 1s. Obviously, I don't think Warren's in the situation that Bowers and Laporta are in, but I think Warren should have a very solid season. Next, we're hitting the Ohio State guys. At the 108, I'll take Quinshon Judkins, but it's really a toss-up between the 2 Ohio State running backs for me. Judkins is going in as the presumed starter in Cleveland. Obviously, it's a little bit of a dumpster fire in Cleveland. They have 5 quarterbacks, but do they have any quarterbacks? So there's going to be some moving pieces, but I know Kevin Stefanski really wants to run the rock and run it effectively, and I think Judkins can do that for him. He showed good effectiveness, good availability. He didn't miss any games in college. I don't think Judkins will make so many flashy plays, but I think by the end of the season, the volume will speak for itself. He will get the amount of touches he needs to produce at a solid fantasy level. I expect 200 to 250 carries. I think he could be an 8 touchdown guy in his rookie season, to be honest, if that Cleveland offense is a little more lively than we're expecting. And he's a second round pick. They're putting a lot of eggs in the Judkins basket. Doesn't look like they're going to re-sign Nick Chubb, which they shouldn't. They don't need an old running back. They've drafted two young rookies that are very solid. So I like Judkins' outlook for 2025, despite him being on the Cleveland Browns. At the 109, we have TreVeyon Henderson. And like I said, Judkins and Henderson are mostly interchangeable for me. I gave Judkins a slight nod because he's going to be the presumed starter, where in New England, Ramondre will probably get that nod just because he's the veteran there. But I think by season's end, Henderson will be the guy that everyone's talking about. He will be the flashy player. Ramondre will be, pumping up the middle for 2-yard gains, and Henderson will be making flashy plays either in the passing game or the running game. I think he is a guy who can break off these long runs and should hopefully take a lot of the third down work. I think they want to use him as a good pass catcher out of the backfield, maybe provide a better outlet for Drake May so he doesn't have to run as much, take as many hits. He can just dump it down to TreVeyon Henderson and let him do his burst thing. Henderson's a guy who I think his 2025 outlook is not as good as his 3-year outlook, which is a little bit different from a few of these other guys where they're in prime positions for this year, but moving forward, things would shake up. Henderson's the opposite. I think Ramondre is going to eat into his workload this year, but in the 2026-2027 season, I think Henderson's going to be in the RB1 conversation moving forward. I think he starts that trend a little bit at the end of this year, but Ramondre will be just annoying enough not to let him kind of do his full thing. That's why he falls down to the 109. At the 110, the second of the stud tight ends, Colston Loveland. And truly the only reason he falls a few slots behind Warren for me is just how crowded Chicago is. Obviously, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, they drafted Luther Burden, Colston Loveland, and he has to battle in his own position group with Cole Kmet, where we know Tyler Warren's the bona fide starter, no competition. Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet are going to be 1A, 1B, at least for a while at the beginning of the season, right? So with that said, Loveland's another guy who maybe the 3-year outlook's better than this season, which is why he finds himself down at the 110. But I think he'll still get plenty involved. You're not going to be a top 10 pick and not get, involved, especially with Ben Johnson coming to town. He was in Detroit when Laporta had his tight end 1 season in his rookie year. So I think Loveland will get involved to a very solid degree. There's just a lot of mouths to feed in that offense for now, so I don't know where the target share will end up. Which is why Loveland finds himself down at the 110. And this next guy at the 111 might shock a couple people, but I'm going Tre Harris. For the LA Chargers, he should easily have the wide receiver 2 job, all right? He should be out Quinshon Judkins. For some reason, reports into camp are saying Johnson has the edge. I would not believe them. It might last a week or two, but by week 3 or 4 in the season, Tre Harris is going to be the bona fide wide receiver 2 behind Ladd McConkey. In an offense with Justin Herbert throwing the ball, I think this is the perfect spot for Tre Harris in the 2025 season to get his career off to a blazing start. And really, he's a guy you could argue has a top 3 role on his team for the entire class. I just love where Tre Harris landed, which is why you find him up here in the 111. He's obviously not the first round draft pick that Tet McMillan was, but I think Tre Harris's situation could just find himself producing at a high level as a high-end wide receiver 3, back-end wide receiver 2, as long as Herbert has the amount of pass tips we're expecting. I know I said earlier the Chargers want to pound the rock, but Herbert always puts up his numbers by season's end. So I think Tre Harris is in line for a very solid 2025 rookie season. And to round out this first round at the 112, we have Kaleb Johnson in Pittsburgh. Full disclosure, I made these rankings prior to the George Pickens trade, which probably would bump Kaleb up a little bit just because there's one less mouth to feed in that offense, which means more carries for Kaleb Johnson, right? He's going to be battling Jaylen Warren a little bit for carries and touches, but I think Warren's going to be more of the third down guy. And Kaleb Johnson proved he can take a heavy workload as he did at Iowa. He's another guy who should just have massive volume and a perfect spot in Pittsburgh. So really, I don't feel that strongly between Judkins, Henderson, and Johnson for this season, especially after the Pickens trade. I think those 3 are kind of right in the same tier, at least for the 2025 season. To start the second round, in the 201, we have Emeka Egbuka, and he just couldn't slide any further. The only reason he is down this far is because of the wide receiver room there in Tampa, right? Mike Evans, Godwin, McMillan, Egbuka, Cade Otton. They have Bucky Irving, who I know they want to get a bunch of touches too. So obviously Egbuka would be in the mid-first round if he was like in a Tre Harris situation where he's the clear wide receiver 2, going to get work out of the slot. And I expect him to carve himself a nice role in his rookie season, but he is a guy, the 3-year outlook is better than this year alone. And I've kind of said that about a couple of guys, which is why they are later in this redraft format as opposed to dynasty, where Egbuka would clearly be in the first round for dynasty. He falls to the 201 just because of situation. But with that being said, I think the Bucs are going to want to get their first round wide receiver going, get him confidence early. So I don't think he's in a terrible situation for this rookie season. Just not as prime as some of those guys like Tet McMillan, like Tre Harris, which is why he finds himself at the 201. And another guy who finds himself in a prime position is our next pick, 202, Jayden Higgins, wide receiver for the Texans. He is another guy who should be the wide receiver 2 on his team. Same situation as Tre Harris, just with CJ Stroud at quarterback, which is why I've dropped him down a couple slots. And honestly, I like Tre Harris, the prospect, a little bit better than Higgins. They're not, tiers different, but just a little bit better. But Higgins should find himself a very clear role and target share in this offense behind Nico Collins, right? I think he'll be a solid late round pick in a redraft format. Potential upside and PPR especially to be, a back end wide receiver 3. We know the Texans try to get Mixon going on the ground, but there are games where they just resort to CJ Stroud slinging the ball all over, which would be, obviously very good for Jayden Higgins. So I think he has definite potential in the 2025 season. Next up, a guy you maybe think I've forgotten about, but I haven't, and that's Matthew Golden, the first-round pick for the Green Bay Packers. And the main reason he is down here at the 203 is that is probably the most crowded wide receiver room in the entire NFL. Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Tucker Kraft at tight end, and most of all, Josh Jacobs, the running back they want to get touches and touches each game. I know Matthew Golden's a first-round pick, so they're going to utilize him probably as a field stretcher, and he's one of those guys, he might be just a better NFL player than a better fantasy player, right? I just think it's way too crowded. We don't know where the target share is going to end up for Matthew Golden. I could see him having the Christian Watson role, where he's a field stretcher, averages like 3 catches a game, sometimes he'll break one for a touchdown. I just don't think he'll be a consistent fantasy piece in this 2025 season. And to be honest, if he wasn't a first-round pick, he would be in the back end of this second round. So the only reason I have him up this far is because he was drafted in the first round. So I'm expecting them to try to use him a little more than typically, or a third-round pick or whatever. But I just don't see the situation as prime for Matthew Golden, at least in this 2025 season. In the 204, I'm going to go Cam Skattebo, going to the New York Giants. He and Tracy are going to be 1A, 1B, but I think they want to get Skattebo going. He's kind of a bruiser, but also has the agility and skill to play on third down. So I'm going to be really interested to see how the Tracy Skattebo kind of split goes. Is it going to be 50-50? If so, I think Skattebo is right around in this range, maybe a little lower. But for some reason, I'm expecting Skattebo to be in that 65-35 or 60-40, including some third down work, where you would think Tracy would be that guy, being a former wide receiver. But I think they really like Skattebo's kind of complete skill set. I think he'll end up taking over that RB1 role in New York. And let's face it is not a team with a ton of skill set outside of Malik Neighbors, right? And they've got some veteran quarterbacks in the system. Most notably, Russ should be the starter, who loves to dump the ball down to running backs. So I think really this is a prime position for Cam Skattebo. I think he could have a sneaky, solid season. And this next guy is another guy in a prime position, and that is Jack Bech, wide receiver for Vegas. He should definitely be the wide receiver 2 behind Jacoby Myers. And it's going to be the Bowers, Myers, Bech show, all on the piggyback of Ashton Jeanty. I think it's a very clear role for Jack Bech. I don't think he's some amazing talent by any stretch, but you know what you're going to get, right? This one feels more of like a safe play, like he's just going to be solid. Nothing ever seems too flashy, much like his partner Jacoby Myers in Vegas. Neither guy is going to be too flashy or make the crazy plays, but at the end of the game, you check that box score, and it's going to be a solid 15 fantasy points, more weeks than not. So I really think it's a good position for Jack Bech. Geno Smith has provided plenty of fantasy opportunity for receivers in the past. Situation alone for Jack Bech is why he finds himself up here at the 205. And next we have Tyler Shough, QB for New Orleans. And like I said, in a super flex format, this late in the draft, Tyler could be a good QB3 option on the bench. Or if you really, really punted, he could try to be your quarterback too. I'm not expecting huge things in his rookie season, but he only has to beat out Spencer Rattler for the starting job, right? So this 206 pick is if he wins the starting job, obviously. But it's not the best situation by any stretch of the imagination. I'm expecting New Orleans to be pretty bad this season. He's got Kamara to rely on, Olave on the outside if he can stay healthy. Outside of that, it is pretty dire in New Orleans. But I think skill set alone, he could find himself being a back-end QB2. I think he might have some sneaky rushing upside in him, much like how Bo Nix last year was definitely sneakier. We weren't expecting him to run as much as he did. So yeah, 1 quarterback leagues, I'm not interested in Tyler Shough, but in Superflex, if you want to do a QB3 dart throw late, I don't mind it whatsoever. All right, now obviously we're getting to the point where we're getting to some deeper guys, some dart throws, sleepers if you will, and that is Kyle Williams at the 207 doesn't fit this description any better. Obviously, this is a crowded receiver room in New England, but I think he's going to climb his way to the top to be that wide receiver 2 behind Stephon Diggs. I really think New England loves this guy. And with young quarterback Drake May, I think Kyle Williams should have all the opportunity in the world to climb up the depth chart and carve out a very nice role for himself as that wide receiver 2. Obviously, I'm projecting because they have other young guys who could be the ones to take that leap. And obviously, we would look silly for ranking Kyle Williams this high. I'm predicting that Kyle Williams will be the guy who makes a leap in his rookie season, 2025. And at the 208, I'm going Dylan Sampson. And I feel like he's more talented than his 5th round pick selection. And I feel like Cleveland felt the same way, right? They probably wouldn't have even thought of going running back after taking Judkins that early. But when Sampson falls to him, they could be trying for a little Monty and Gibbs situation like in Detroit. And I think Sampson, obviously not quite the athlete that Gibbs is, but I think he could have the similar skill set, the burst, the speed. I think if you get him in the open space, he'll make a lot of people miss, like A-Chain, like Gibbs. He's that type of player. And I think he's sneaky underrated running between the tackles. One of my kind of hot takes is that Dylan Sampson will outplay Quinshon Judkins. Maybe not this year in 2025, but throughout their rookie deals, I think Sampson will become the better running back than Judkins. But that's just my opinion. And maybe I'm a little too high on Sampson, but I think his burst could be game-changing, much like we saw Devon A-Chains. And next with the 209, another guy you may have thought I forgot about, Luther Burden. And it's my same argument for why Loveland was so late. It's just too crowded. I don't know if Kaleb will be able to get the ball to everyone, especially when we're predicting DJ Moore to continue being a beast, Rome Odunze to make that leap. I think Chicago will be top 10 in the league in pass attempts, just with how their roster is taking shape. With that being said, I just don't know how many of those pass attempts will be going to Burden in this 2025 season. Not to mention he's kind of a true wide receiver diva. So when things aren't going his way, maybe he'll start to lose confidence, lose focus, and kind of find himself in a rut. So I don't think 2025 is going to be the year of Luther Burden. It's not to say in the next couple seasons he doesn't turn into a very solid player, but I just don't think it is going to be this season. Next at the 210, a pure situation play, and that is Mason Taylor, tight end for the New York Jets. Listen, I don't think this is a sexy pick by any means, but situation alone, he should be the easy starting tight end for the New York Jets. I know Justin Fields is the quarterback there, but when Fields was quarterbacking Pittsburgh, he hit Freiermuth quite a bit in those first 4 weeks. Like, Freiermuth was fantasy relevant, to be honest with you. Fields likes to throw those kind of short intermediate passes that are easy for him to see, easy for him to complete. And I think Mason Taylor will kind of fill that role for him. I don't have a screaming hot take like he's going to be a top 5 tight end or any of that. But I think situation alone, he'll be kind of a solid tight end 2, back end tight end 1 potential in this 2025 season. This next guy I'm definitely predicting on, but that is Bhaysul Tuten, 211, the running back in Jacksonville. And this is a guy who I think is just going to climb his way to the top of the depth chart, getting himself more and more touches as the weeks progress. Much like Bucky Irving last season, just kind of slowly started taking more reps and opportunities. I know he has to battle with 2 guys with Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby, but I already think he's better than Bigsby personally. So now it's just becoming a battle of him and Etienne. And I think Tuten will be just an explosive player that Jacksonville will really fall in love with. I'm just projecting him to slowly get more and more work over the season. So he might not be a guy you draft or roster early, but I think he'll be a very solid waiver pickup come middle of the season. I think Tuten is going to find himself in a sneaky good role in 2025. And our last and final pick to round out our 2 rounds here, Terrance Ferguson at the 212. And listen, we can tell Sean McVay really, really likes this guy. And we know Matthew Stafford loves to throw to the tight end, right? I think Tyler Higbee and Terrance Ferguson will be in a lot of 2 tight end sets, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ferguson overtakes Higbee. Higbee's getting up there in age, lots of injuries. I think Ferguson is going to be one of Stafford's go-to guys by middle of the season. I know they've got Puka and Devontae on the outsides, so you're kind of wondering how many targets are left for other guys. They're going to be target hogs, obviously. But Stafford has always had solid receiving weapons on the outside and has still loved to hit the tight end over the middle, creating a great career for Tyler Higbee, and I'm expecting the same for Terrance Ferguson. Starting with the 2025 season, I think he's going to slowly get things rolling and build some momentum into next season, but I think he'll be solid enough this year to to be a mid to high end tight end too. There are my top 24 for my rookie redraft mock draft. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Is there a guy you think I'm too high or too low on? Who do you agree with me on? Just leave it down in the comments. While you're down there, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button so you can stay tuned for more content. We're dropping videos every week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for the support, and we'll see you next one.